Hey, you're listening to Rising into Mindful Motherhood. I'm your host, Dr. Katie Wood. I'm a barefoot mama bear, pharmacist, integrative fertility health coach, and lover of all things nature and animals. I'm on a mission to have intentional conversations about the good, the bad, and the ugly when it comes to fertility, pregnancy, postpartum, and beyond. My mindful guest and I will be talking about struggles, wins, natural wellness, and how we grow and transform as we enter motherhood. My background in healthcare has shown me how broken our medical system is. My own struggles to become pregnant has shown the lack of support for mamas to be, the lack of guidance for women to have a nourishing and vibrant pregnancy, the isolation, mom guilt, and all the things we hold after bringing baby earthside. I want this platform to be a place where women can feel connected, safe, and supported to share and hear their stories. A place to use our voice to discuss and advocate about what we need and deserve as mothers. So let's dive in, shall we? Hello and welcome to Rising into Mindful Motherhood. Today I'll be talking with Hannah Bowers. She is a mother, integrative nutrition health coach, and certified lactation counselor. And she is passionate about supporting women through the preconception and potentially infertility through postpartum phase. And today we're going to talk about her home birth experiences. She's had 2 so far, and how she's prepping for baby number 3 due this fall. So welcome, Hannah. I'm so happy to have you on the podcast.
Oh, thanks so much. I'm looking forward to just talking home birth with you.
Yes. Yeah. I think that you and I are very similar in that we're very multi-passionate. It seems like from the preconception through like postpartum phase. So I know that this conversation is going to be really nice. And, I would love to have you on for future episodes to talk about
Well,
all the
thank you.
different phases. So I would love to just hear a little bit about you and your journey to motherhood, you know, as
Yeah.
easily as you're able to put that synopsis.
Yeah, absolutely. So, our journey to motherhood has always been a little bit of a struggle. I've got some pre-existing health condition that makes it just really hard to just get my body to operate well. So, one of our earliest really introductions into the world of fertility, which right now I've spent a lot of my time in the last few years focusing on fertility. My intro to fertility was really my own personal experience of, just trying to bring the body back into a place of balance so that we could get pregnant. And I'm so grateful that we miscarried once, unfortunately, but we have 2 beautiful boys, rambunctious, crazy, wild. Our house is not quiet at all. And we are expecting another here in the fall, which has been just a delight. But yeah, so my passion really for arriving at the place of motherhood has fueled a lot of my passion of the whole spectrum. And it really funny. It started years ago. This is even before kind of diving into our own fertility journey. We lived in a small town. We had a library that I would ride my bike to. I just loved riding my bike around town. It was just this really cute community. But the library had so few books. And I remember going in thinking, I can't find anything I like. I'm not really a big fiction reader. And somehow I made it and found my way to Aviva Romm's pregnancy book and thought, this looks interesting. Let's take it home. Not yet at all in the season of thinking, oh, we're going to have kids right now, but more or less, my curiosity got the best of me. And so home went that book. And wow, that just opened my eyes to this world of birth, of pregnancy, postpartum, all these things that I had never considered before. And I was hooked. It's been about 10 years since then. And I have just consumed as much as I possibly can on pregnancy, in addition to fertility and postpartum since then. So that's kind of the short journey of how we arrived here. It's definitely just a place of passion for me.
That's awesome. I love that story. To just look at a pregnancy book when you're not even in that phase, like that's
Yeah.
amazing. And I think that that's just how the universe works, right? Like you were drawn to that book for whatever reason, and now look at where you are and the things that you're doing 10 years later. So that's really cool. Thanks for sharing that. And I will definitely link that book in the show notes. I'm actually not familiar with that book, so I will have to check that out myself.
Yeah, I think it's really good if you're looking for at least when it's a bit of an older book. So I'm going to put that preface out there. I don't think it's been updated, but Aviva's history of being a home birth midwife, having been just an herbalist with such reputation, she incorporates that into the pages of this book. And so you get kind of the picture of pregnancy from like the technical medical perspective,
Mm-hmm.
but she does it in such a beautiful, elegant way. It's hard to come away from that book
Mm,
feeling anything but like, wow, this is beautiful.
right. Like all the endless possibilities.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm sure. Yeah, awesome. I love that. So speaking of, doing your research and just learning all the things, when did you decide in your mind that home birth was for you?
Yeah. So our journey to home birth was kind of it was in a way I think unexpected. I knew from the get-go that I did not want to do a traditional hospital birth. Probably partially compliments to that book I just mentioned and some of the other more naturally minded resources that I had read by the time we were expecting. And that first pregnancy that we had, it was really a surprise. We'd been told a couple times that we weren't going to be able to conceive. And I started a new treatment for this condition that I was dealing with. And lo and behold, we found out we were pregnant, which was just like the greatest shock in the world, like amazing. But like, oh my goodness, like we didn't think this was even possible. And so at that point in time, we lived in Colorado where home birth is fairly common. And I discussed with my husband and just, after discussing, decided that home birth at that time didn't make sense for us. We lived in an apartment. We weren't yet sure that that's quite the route we wanted to go. And so we planned that we would deliver at a birth center up in Denver. It's about an hour and a half away from us.
Wow.
Just saying that, I cannot
Yeah.
even imagine an hour and a half that's like without traffic trying to get to that birth center. But incredible center. We went up, we did a visit at the time, and I don't know if currently, but they were considered the top birth center in the country. So really impressive facility. Their approach was great. It was a wonderful middle ground for people who weren't quite sure they wanted to do the home birth thing, but didn't want to do the hospital. And unfortunately, before we even had the opportunity to have our first appointment there, we ended up miscarrying about 9 weeks. And so, once again, it was the unexpected surprise and then it ended in an unexpected loss. And so that was just really difficult. But through the course of going through that, a really close friend of mine was also pregnant at the same time in Colorado. She went on to have a home birth in November. And we found out we were expecting again on our anniversary, which was just
Wow.
amazing. Exactly 6 months to the day after our loss. And by that point, things had kind of changed in our perspective. I think maybe we had time to process, evaluate.
Mm,
And we were just like, we don't want to do the birth center thing. We want to have a home birth. Um, and so, yeah, we had decided right then and there with that next baby, that next pregnancy, that the home birth was going to be the right choice for us.
mhm.
And that pregnancy was even kind of wild in and of itself. We ended up moving home at 30 weeks and coming back to a state that does not have a lot of home birth midwives. I was beating down the door for everyone saying, would you
Mhm.
take me? I've been receiving care. We would like to continue with a home birth. And we just got one after another. No, 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 no.
Mhm.
And so we thought, we don't really have any other options. We will choose the best possible option that we can. There's OSU midwives is considered the most holistic option in our area as far as hospitals go. So we're like, okay, we'll just do that. Well, lo and behold, somebody emails me back and said, we'll add you to our schedule. So come in let's get an appointment as soon as possible. And so we arrived, had our first appointment at 30 weeks with this new team of midwives. And we're so blessed to be able to deliver with them just 8 weeks later. Um,
Wow.
totally unexpected. But yeah, that was kind of like the wild. We're going to have a home birth, then we're not going to have a home birth. And then, wow, we actually get to have a home birth story, which I'm so grateful for.
Wow, that's amazing. And it's just crazy how like life just throws different things at you. And I'm so sorry to hear about your loss.
Thank you.
But I do think it also oddly allows for like space to grow and heal in different ways that were unexpected.
Hmm.
And yeah, that's just amazing that that worked out for you. And I'm so it's crazy how life works.
Hmm.
So you mentioned a team of midwives. So like, what did that look like? Because for me, it was just one midwife. She worked for herself. So I had her at the birth. She was the only one I was seeing pretty much for the second half of my pregnancy. And then I had a doula. So were you seeing all of them? And did you know who was going to be there to assist with the birth? Or was it kind of like who was on call?
Yeah. So in our community, we do actually have a collaborative that's like 8 midwives that operates more like an OB system. We didn't use them. We had asked them and they gave us a no.
Okay.
But this was a team of 2 midwives that worked together and had for quite a while. The one midwife had started out in OB as a nurse back in the 80s, and the other one had started, she became a CPM sometime in like the early 2010s, and they operate from a philosophy that there should always be 2 midwives at a birth.
Okay.
And the reasoning for that is because if there's an issue, unexpected thing arises with mom or baby, they want to have at least 2 midwives present to be able to attend one to each.
Sure.
um, so they were wonderful, and they had a student midwife as well who
Mm.
was also present. And so we were able to meet all of them, and over the course of 8 weeks, we got to know them. Since that time, those midwives are no longer working together, not for any negative reason. They live about an hour apart, and found that the commute time was difficult to make work, especially since my midwife, who has continued to serve, delivered my last baby and will deliver this one, tends to go more west, and the other one's that hour east from her. So they were great. We were so grateful for them. But then she does continue to have at least one other midwife present at
Mhm.
all times with her
Yeah.
during her births.
Yeah, I can see how that's a good philosophy to have.
Hmm.
Just being prepared too, I think is huge. So that's great. So I would love to kind of hear about your first birth, like how long were
Hmm.
you in labor? What types of things did you do to really help get you through the contractions, and how long did you have to push for, and all those fun things?
Yeah. So my oldest Henry, he just turned 6 in June.
Oh,
We were kind of, new parents. You don't really know what to expect. And somewhere around 37 weeks, I started to have really strong Braxton Hicks contractions. And so we'd go in and see the midwife, and she'd be like, I don't know, you could have the baby anytime. I would just be constantly aware, because we would just have these Braxton Hicks. They would come, they wouldn't go away. And we were like, we don't know. We'd
wow.
time them and they'd be rhythmic, and then like they'd go away, but they didn't really hurt. They were just really like intense, to the point that like everything had to stop. And so that went on for about a week. And then one day at 38 and 5, I believe, I woke up. They kind of continued from the time I woke up, felt a little bit different that day. But, we'd been going through this for a week. I didn't really think anything of it. We just kind of went on with what we were going to do, did our walks around our apartment complex, just all the normal stuff. And about 9 p.m. that night, something shifted. And we went from having what in retrospect was probably early labor to just full blown active labor. And I remember being a little bit startled and surprised by the transition. Like, you prepare, you practice. I'd been doing breathing exercises for weeks. I've been doing my spinning babies. Really trying to just get in a great mindset and prepare. But then it starts, and you're kind of like, oh, okay, well, this is labor. And so labor went really well. I mean, it continued for, I think, about an hour before we called the midwives, realizing that, okay, I think this is time. They probably should know so that they can head over here. And then we just kind of continued to labor for a while into the night.
Mhm.
We hit this point though, and I believe it was around transition after what we discussed with the midwives afterwards, and we just kind of hung out there for a while. And honestly, that was a really tough time for me mentally.
Mhm.
I wanted to power through. I wanted to get to the other side, but we were like stuck at that transition point. And I'm really grateful. My midwives tend to be very like hands off. They don't really get in your space, do checks unless, they feel that it's necessary, which is really awesome because it allows you to kind of dial in, really focus. But we got to the point where one of the midwives, Hannah, was kind of like, hey, let's do a check. Let's kind of see where things are at. This had to be about 1:00 in the morning. So at this point, we've been laboring for about 4 hours. I generally always labor on my ball. So that's like 4 hours on my ball with my knees. And, you're kind of tired at this point, but, you just kind of keep pushing through. And she's like, we've got the bag is bulging. It's keeping the cervix from being able to fully dilate. She's like, I don't like to pop the water bag, but I'd like to suggest that we go ahead and do that. That way we can kind of help get over this last, I don't know, maybe it was maybe 0.5 centimeter. So we can just finish.
Yeah.
And so we were like, okay, let's do it. At this point, I'm like, please, let's do it. And so she popped the water bag and it was like something shifted. And within about half an hour or so, maybe 45 minutes, I could start to feel that things were no longer at that high intensity phase, but we were transitioning into that pushing phase. And that was, so exciting because it's like, okay, we've made it through a lot of the hard work. Now we're getting really close to meeting our baby. And we knew that Henry was going to be a boy. We hadn't picked a name for him, but, it was like, okay, this little boy's about to be born. And so then we started pushing, and I don't remember exactly how long it was. I don't think it was much more than an hour in total. But I just remember being in that stage where there's the most hands-on part of the entire labor process where they would kind of come around me and they would remind me, okay, don't push hard, let's pant. And so they would be like, doing whatever the breath movement was that they really wanted me to do. And so I remember having to just really focus on that, focus on the breathing, focus on resisting the urge to just bear down, because it does feel like you just want to push through. You're so close. You want to push through. And so somewhere not long after, he was born, I think it was maybe an hour and 20 minutes. And we had a sweet little boy, 6 pounds, 15 ounces. And so that portion of labor in total was just about 6 hours. So wherever that lands in the timeline. Yeah. So that was my first birth experience.
That's a short and quick birth for your first one. Cause I feel like they usually say they're longer for your first child, but obviously, it's different for everyone, but amazing. Yeah. That sounds really nice and a peaceful, basically bringing him earthside. So very nice.
Yeah. It was, I'm really grateful that it was, I have friends who have labored for much, much longer. Most of my very close friends have all chosen home birth, and when I heard their birth stories, labored much longer. So, when you go into the labor, you try to go in with the best possible mindset. And I was just so thrilled to get to the other side and be like, oh, wow, we aren't laboring for days. Yeah. And so I feel really fortunate and blessed by that.
Awesome. Yeah. Beautiful. And was the delivery of the placenta and all of that went good and well?
So that's where things got a little interesting.
Today's episode of Rising into Mindful Motherhood is proudly sponsored by the Confident Conception membership. Are you or someone you know on what feels like a never-ending journey to motherhood, facing an uphill battle of fertility challenges? I'm Dr. Katie, your podcast host, pharmacist, and integrative fertility coach with over a decade of experience. I've been where you are, and I understand the roller coaster of emotions and heartache. That's why I've created the Confident Conception membership, a program designed to help you address the real reasons behind fertility challenges. Like my client Elizabeth, who struggled with fertility for 9 years, having tried and failed other programs. She was in disbelief when just a couple of months into using my Confident Conception method, she finally got her first positive pregnancy test and welcomed her healthy baby boy this year. Using the Confident Conception method, we combine traditional medicine and energy healing to unlock your innate and abundant fertility potential. This isn't just about putting a Band-Aid on to cover up the physical symptom. It's about healing the energetic and physical root causes. As a member, you'll receive personalized guidance, bi-weekly live coaching calls, and become a part of a supportive community of like-minded women who truly understand what you're going through. We offer flexible payment options, plus our annual members receive exclusive savings and bonuses to accelerate their path to pregnancy. Don't let another month of frustration and overwhelm pass you by. As a special offer to our listeners, you can use the promo code PODCAST10 to receive 10% off the lifetime of your membership. Secure your spot now and expedite your journey to motherhood today by visiting www.youремpoweredfertility.com/membership to learn more and enroll. Together, we'll pave the way to your confident conception for a future filled with joy, unconditional love, and the pitter-patter of tiny feet. The link is in the show notes. Sign up today and your future self will thank you.
Yeah. Baby was born, beautiful, great. We got him on the chest. They got me back into bed. And then for that first birth, the placenta was not wanting to come out. Mm-hmm. And so like the first hour passed and the second hour passed and we were nearing the third hour and we tried to do all the different things. And my midwife comes out and she's like, I need you to go try the bathroom. And if you can't go, we have to place a catheter. And what I always tell people is, to me, the most terrifying thing about birth to me is getting stitches, which I'm so grateful I've never had to have stitches down there. That just seems horrible. And so I feel for anyone who has ever had to go through that. Yeah. But the second thing was hearing her say that I'm going to have to place a catheter was like something in my brain went, we are not going to do this. And so we had to get my bladder to empty. Yeah. I think I hadn't drank any water until it got to the point of pushing. And then I was so thirsty that I just drank way too much water. So for anyone who's listening, if you're planning for your home birth, your first birth, have someone on water duty. In retrospect, that would have been so much better to have little sips here and there. And so once we got my bladder to empty, we were able to get that placenta to deliver. There was no issues whatsoever there. But yeah, they were, unknown to me. They were until that point where we were kind of getting closer and closer and closer to 3 hours. I'm just in baby bliss over here. I got a baby. I'm happy. They're like, we kind of need to get this moving. But yeah, so everything was good though. Once we got that placenta delivered, no issues. Yeah. So smooth sailing from there, I would say.
Mm-hmm. So did you have to use a catheter or were you able to get by without it?
Thankfully, I did not have to.
You didn't? Okay.
No. And the struggle was just getting those muscles to coordinate to use the restroom, which another thing that I had no expectation of as a first-time mom. Like, I guess my muscles and my pelvic floor have just gone through something very unusual and they might not want to function well. So the peri bottle came to the rescue, using that to kind of just naturally help things begin to flow and
relax. Yeah.
Yes. And that truthfully has been for both my postpartums has been like a staple. I don't think I could have survived. Yeah. I mean, you'd make it through, but it was the peri bottle is just the best.
Yeah. So I actually had to get a catheter while I was in labor still because I could not empty my bladder and she wouldn't move anymore. And so that was not pleasant. So I'm glad that you didn't have to do that.
Yeah, man, I can't even imagine in labor having to get a catheter. That I just think that this would be just you really have to apply all of your calming skills. So, but hopefully she was born fairly quickly after that.
Yeah, I think things definitely moved along faster after that happened. So, and the crazy part is I didn't even feel that I had to go to the bathroom. Like, I couldn't even feel it at all. And then, once she did it, like I definitely had to, but I couldn't even feel it at all. So it's wild. So I want to hear about your second home birth. Was it pretty similar to the first one? Was it different? So it sounds like you were between 38, 39 weeks for the first babe.
So my two pregnancies have been really similar. Almost identical weight gain. I think I was a pound different with the boys. It was the same with delivery. I went into labor with William at 38 and 5.
Wow.
So it's like there's some sort of clock that went off and it was time to start that process. But William's labor was a little bit different. We had no forewarning that we were going into labor. About a week before, I had a little less than a week before because it was the Sunday before, and he was born on a Saturday morning. I woke up in the middle of the night with some contractions, and it was just like, okay, let's kind of walk it out. Let's see if these will go away, do the bathroom things. And those contractions maybe lasted for 30 minutes tops and just went away when I laid back down to go back to sleep, which on one hand was kind of like, oh man, like, so bummed because it's like, oh, you think there was like this mental struggle of like in the days following, like, oh man, maybe I should have just tried a little harder or done more, done this or done that. But just as they always say, if your body's not ready to go into labor, it's not going to go into labor. But so we fast forward to that 38 and 5, which happened to be like a Saturday at this time. And so middle of the night, wake up again, contractions in labor. But this time they don't stop. They don't go away. They are full-blown contractions. They are coming really fast, really intense. And so I woke up my husband and I was like, I'm pretty sure this is the time we're having a baby. And so he called our midwife pretty quickly. They had actually requested to hear me on the phone. They told us, we really think you're going to have a fast birth with this second baby. So we want to hear your voice on the phone so we know whether or not we need to come. So I remember him dialing the number. He hands me the phone. I'm like, Hannah, it's happening. Just calling to let you know. And she's like, okay, we'll be there soon. And so I went downstairs, this time kind of, like, okay, I felt it's funny because, you kind of, in advance going into your second birth that, like you kind of know what's going to happen. This time I really felt comfortable with the stages of labor. I had, dove more deeply into that. And so I felt really comfortable, almost like evaluating where I was at, which was cool because when I hit transition point, I looked at my midwife and I was like, I think I'm in transition. She's like, yes, you are. And so that was like really empowering to be able to be like, oh, I'm like tracking with kind of what's going on here. But I went downstairs before she arrived, got out some watermelon. I'd been trying to have like some fresh fruit and stuff like that in the fridge so that when I went into labor, I'd know, okay, I'm going to have this to kind of munch on a little bit. I'm not really a big eat. I don't really eat a whole lot in labor. I tend to throw up at some point. So I don't like to eat too much. But so ate a little bit. And things just kept progressing and moving faster. And I remember at one point, you just kind of start to zone in. My husband had a list of all the things that we discussed. And so he just started kind of like moving around. For him too, we discussed in retrospect, the second birth was so much smoother because he knew what to expect. The first birth, for everyone is kind of like this great mystery because even though you read about it, what's going to generally what happens. You don't really know what happens until you're in the moment experiencing your version of labor. And so this time he just felt more empowered as well. He kind of got, made sure lights were dimmed. He got the rice packs hot. He got the cream that I'd set out and the music on, and he was getting the water ready and doing all the things. He was really great. But so I remember zoning in, and then all of a sudden I remember hearing the downstairs door swing open. We lived in a 3-story townhouse at this time, and our main living was on floor 2 and the bedrooms were on floor 3. And I just remember hearing my midwife running up the stairs, and I hear her bag sling and hit the wall as she rounds the corner, trying to get as fast as possible up so she can kind of like do a quick check, see where things are at. And so she must have arrived maybe like an hour and a half in. And it wasn't long until the next baby decided to make his appearance. We didn't know if he was going to be a boy or a girl. So that was a different, kind of a little bit of a different take on that birth. But 3.5 hours and he was delivered. I don't think I pushed for more than 10 minutes, if even, because I think he primarily was delivered just the body's ejection reflex. But I just remember it going so fast. But the thing about that, which was really interesting, and I was talking to a friend who she had a really long first labor. Her second labor was very fast, faster than my second labor, and discussing how it was, on one hand, you're like, great, it's over. Short, but on the other hand, it's so intense that your brain doesn't have a chance necessarily to like compensate with what's going on. And so he was born in a really short time frame. Placenta was born within like 20 minutes, which I was so grateful for. That was one of the things going into this labor that was like, I'm just, that's one of the things I'd really love, to not have a 3-hour delivery of the placenta.
Yeah.
And then we just kind of transitioned out of that. But it was a really good birth. I was in a really great headspace that whole time.
Hmm.
And yeah, even though, it had its challenging points, it was good overall.
Yeah. Wow. That's incredible. That sounds like a dream birth right there. That's amazing. I love how your body's just like, all right, 38.5, we're going. It's go time.
Hmm.
So it'll be interesting to see how your third birth plays
Hmm.
out. Very interesting. And I'm
Yeah.
assuming you probably don't know the sex.
We did find out this
You did.
time.
Are you
But
sharing?
we decided not to share.
Gotcha.
So we're thinking we'll probably share with our mothers,
Mhm.
because they're chomping at the bit to know, because
Yeah.
we know. But outside of that, no, we've really been relishing in this time of like, we know, but that's pretty much it. My sister lives with us, so she's gotten the privilege to know. But it's just been really special. We've, some people really feel strongly about doing not finding out or finding out, and having done it both ways for us, we just kind of were like, well, we don't feel strongly towards either way.
Hmm.
We decided to do an ultrasound this birth. We didn't do any with the last birth, which was awesome. I loved seeing the ultrasound, and the technician was talking about all of the anatomy and stuff, which was just like incredible. And so we were like, well, since we're there, we'll just find out. And
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
happy either way. So,
It's kind of like a different version, like but you're not telling
hmm
everyone. So it's still a surprise for some people.
hmm
Very nice. Awesome. So you are due in the fall, I think.
yeah, right on the week of Thanksgiving.
Wow. Okay.
Hmm
Okay.
So I'm hopeful for a little bit of another early delivery. It'd be nice
Uh-huh.
to have baby before Thanksgiving, so that, we can hopefully, we've had enough time that we can either join with family or have family maybe come to us.
Hmm.
But if not, that's totally fine too. You can't really predict these things.
Yeah. No. So are you planning anything differently, or what is that looking like for you?
Yeah, so far as I've really evaluated, I really tried to give myself a period of time where I'm thinking through maybe things I didn't try in the past, other options. I've really settled on, I think I'm going to be preparing a lot of the same stuff that I prepared in the past.
Hmm.
I loved the hot rice packs, so I'm actually going to make a bigger hot rice pack and a couple of them, so we have some multiple that can just be kind of available in rotation.
Hmm.
I found Deep Blue from doTERRA. I don't buy a lot of doTERRA products, but I really love their Deep Blue. And I found that being rubbed under the belly was just fantastic for just kind of taking an edge off.
Yeah.
Um, it just provided some sort of like warmth. And so I want to use that again in this birth. But otherwise, I guess not really a whole lot that I have that I really want to prep that's different.
Mhm.
Practicing the breathing intentionally, working on getting my system calm. One interesting thing that I'm exploring, it's mostly based on a book that I had read that I'm currently reading. And of course, I can't think of the topic, the name of the book at the moment. I'll have to send that to you post. But it's all about breath work. And the author's talking about how a lot of us overbreathe,
Mm.
just kind of a interesting thought. I'm a big believer in like most of us need to work on improving our breath and our breath quality. But he talks about it to a degree that's different than I'd ever read. And he shares that, while we have an oxygen saturation in our blood that's pretty tightly regulated, the
Mhm.
thing that we can manipulate, so really without even realizing it, is the CO2 receptors in our body and in our lungs. And so he talks about how with over breathing, which I know I'm a prime candidate for, we've worked to kind of like eliminate night breathing within the last year or so. So like I fit into his perfect picture of over breathing. And he talks about how it kind of our brain will actually down regulate how many CO2 receptors are available. And in order for that oxygen in our blood to be able to be released and used, we need to have enough CO2 to release it. They kind of work in a tandem. And so one thing that I'm thinking that I'm going to work on over the next several weeks is improving my breath skill, not just from practicing the calming breath and the things that you normally do for birth, but actually trying to see if we can increase the number of CO2 receptors that my body is actively using.
Mm-hmm.
And then my curiosity is to see how that will impact labor, allowing more oxygen to be available. So that's kind of something a little bit different. But other than that, I tend to be a little bit more extreme when it comes to my birth prep. I just so strongly believe that prepping for labor is like prepping for a marathon, and that it needs to be really intentional.
Mm-hmm.
Mentally, I start trying to think about it in the first trimester, getting myself in a great headspace. And about this point is when I really start to think about intentional movement, not just doing spinning babies, which is a really big part of what our midwives recommend, but other things like making sure I'm staying active, making sure that when I'm exercising, I'm training the muscles that are going to be helpful
Mm-hmm.
in birth. Thinking about squatting, thinking about working on the squat, improving the number, the squatting. Some point after 28 weeks, which I'm about 22, I'm 22 weeks now at the recording of this video. I start to, around 28 weeks, I start to really try to think about a lot of those things that are just known to be great for labor. I see a lot of times, and when I'm reading, when I'm on Instagram, reading blogs and stuff, because I just love to read. I love to hear about other people's experiences, hear about what they've done, what they liked, what they didn't like. And I find that a lot of times we're waiting until that late 35, 36 weeks to really start a lot of these habits that are going to help set the body up for labor. Well,
Mm-hmm.
I want to start them about 28 weeks so that by the time I hit mid 30s, that I'm really comfortable and have been doing them for weeks. So things like walking more, going up and down stairs. I actually love stairs. That was one of my requirements when we bought our house, was like, I told my husband, I said, for when we have our next child, I will need stairs. So we need to have at least one good flight of stairs, ideally two.
Uh-huh.
And I've been actually, we were out at the farmer's market a couple, not this past Saturday, but the Saturday before. And I was making a mental note that the parking garage has 6 flights of stairs. And I love to pop in my headphones after a certain point of being far along in pregnancy and make stair walking regular. So like doing things like that, active movement, making sure that we're eating well.
Yeah.
I do like to do dates because I love dates. So I try to incorporate those. I do red raspberry leaf tea, a lot of the basic stuff that, you read about that is supposed to be good for birth. I do all those things.
Mm-hmm.
And I try to do them faithfully. The one thing this time that I haven't been as good at is I did already get my exercise ball. I blew it up, but I haven't been sitting on it quite as much as I should be.
Mm-hmm.
This is the point where I like to get transition into using that as my primary chair, because I feel like it's almost like a transition period, because, your body does have to adjust to sitting on this ball all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something that I am actively like reminding myself, okay, I need to go sit on the ball, make that my chair.
Yeah.
Get used to the sitting up tall, supporting my posture. So those are kind of all the things that I really love to incorporate.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely great tips to have for yourself and for anyone who's listening, for sure. And are you seeing like a chiropractor or like a pelvic PT or anything like that?
Yeah, so this has been actually a unique pregnancy on that front. I saw a chiropractor periodically through my first pregnancy. My last pregnancy, I was seeing one weekly, which was great. Between my last child being born and this one, I have struggled with a pretty serious chronic illness. And so that's been a unique piece to this puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
It made the first trimester a little bit more challenging, but I feel fantastic now. You'd never know. But my primary care doctor is a DO who works with a lot of pregnant women. And so this pregnancy, instead of seeing a chiropractor, I am seeing him in his office, and
Mm-hmm.
he does the adjustments there. And
Nice.
so it's been really nice because I'm already there for other appointments, to see him and monitor some other things. So it's really nice to just, well, we'll just put this as part of the whole thing, and then I don't have to go somewhere else. So it's been good.
Cool. Yeah, that's kill two birds with one stone. Why not?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, do you plan to have both of your boys at the birth? Are you involving them at all?
Probably not. I love my boys. They tend to be my older boy is really sweet, and he loves to ask lots of questions.
Mm-hmm.
And so actually with William's birth, that's our second, our plan was to have Zach's brother come and pick him up. But when Zach called, he didn't pick up his phone, and he called another friend and didn't pick up his phone. But it turned out okay because Henry slept through the whole birth. He
Yeah.
woke up about 15 minutes after William was born, came down, was like, "Oh, baby," and then was like, "Can I watch a show?" And we're like, "Yes, it's 5:30 in the morning. You can watch a show. This is not normal." Um, but I think for me, I really need to not have that distraction.
Yeah.
I know some moms have a beautiful labors incorporating their children into it, but I need to not be distracted. I need to not be asked questions. I need to not be talked to. I really don't want you to touch me a whole lot. And
Yeah.
I know, knowing my boys, they would want to be like, "What's going on? Why is this happening?" We're already fielding a lot of questions about how is baby born. They're very confused. They don't understand how this happens because, in their mind, there's nowhere big enough for baby to come out. Even though we try to explain it in a way that we think they might understand, they're still like, we just get this puzzled look, like this doesn't compute in our little heads. So I think that most likely we'd probably call one of my husband's brothers or a friend to come pick them up.
Mhm.
Maybe the baby will be born, overnight again, and they'll just sleep through it. That would be ideal, but we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think it's good to know your boundaries and what feels good to you, because
Mm-hmm.
obviously you don't want to get distracted because that can stall labor. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I've seen other home births share like their kids were there, and I've thought to myself, because I've just had my daughter so far, but like, how would it be having her there? She's 4 right now. But yeah, would it be like, what are you doing, mom? Are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay?
Mm-hmm.
So I
Yeah.
think that that's good that, set your boundaries for what feels good to you, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think too, maybe if they're older, I could see, if you really desire to have your children there, if they're older, maybe perhaps it would, in for our situation, might work better. But I was just reading a birth story where someone had pre-assigned a family member to be present to care for their daughter, and I thought that seemed like a really good idea if you're going to have the child there, so they can be present, but then at the same time, the adult can kind of step in and say, "Hey,
Yeah.
let's go redirect and go over here. Let's have a snack. Let's play a game." So that way it's not just like constantly, you know, there's a kid there all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Well, I loved hearing these stories. I'm so excited for you to have your third birth. And I know that you had mentioned you have a free resource for the listeners. Do you mind sharing a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I think the one that we discussed beforehand, which, the portion of my work has been in fertility. And so my free baby dust fertility guide is a resource that I love to make available to anyone who is interested. I'll send you the link, but you can head over to my website too, blissberrywellness.com, and you can find links to it there. It includes podcast updates, and we're about to re-roll back out the regular, like twice a month resource emails, which is really just a curated email with an intentional blog post, podcast, video, something of that nature that we're sending out and saying, "Hey, this is a really good thing to read, to watch, to listen to. Here's kind of the synopsis, but here's the link so you can go check it out." In this great wide world of the internet where everything is so just thrown at you.
Yeah.
It's like sometimes it's really nice to have something that's handpicked from someone that is really taking the time to ensure that a resource is worthwhile. And so that's what that email includes. I'll also make sure I'm getting the birth stories and some other pregnancy resources back up on my website. They
Mhm.
went down when we shifted over to a new website, but I'll have those available too for anyone who's kind of interested in more of the details and enjoying those.
Awesome. Yes. And tell us about your podcast, the Baby Dust Fertility Podcast.
Yeah, so the Baby Dust Fertility Podcast, which you have been a guest on,
Mhm.
which I'm thrilled to have interviewed you. The goal of this show was really to introduce options when it comes to navigating fertility challenges. In my community, a large portion of our members are struggling with unexplained infertility, polycystic ovarian syndrome that isn't really responsive to any treatment, or endometriosis that just continues to be a challenge. And so after asking repeatedly and saying, "Hey guys, what would be helpful to you?" we found that it's expert interviews, hearing from people who have a really great track record in helping couples overcome fertility challenges. And so on this show, we sit down with all sorts of different types of fertility professionals, and we talk about everything you can imagine. We really try to take a functional and integrative, holistic perspective, and just give you ideas of other things that you can explore beyond just taking a pill, pursuing a treatment. And if that's what the route that, someone wants to take, that's great. We just want to equip you with other things that you can also incorporate into your journey. And so you can find that on really any podcasting app, and you can give that a listen and check that out.
Awesome. I love that. I think just being educated and informed so you can make the best decision for you is
Absolutely.
just so necessary. And I think it's lovely to have that resource because it is really hard to know what is, true and right when you're Googling stuff on the internet. So to be able to listen to these experts, experts in their field too, because gosh, just PCOS and endometriosis, both of those things are just so complex in their own right. So that's an amazing resource. So for anyone who is in the TTC season, definitely check that out. And I'd love to just hear some final words for the audience if you have anything to share.
Sure. Well, since we talked about birth and home birth, I'll definitely I'm going to focus on that instead of fertility. But yeah, so I just would encourage anyone who's listening, who's considering home birth, to find people who have given birth at home and ask them about their stories. I think one of the biggest challenges for making that decision and getting a really informed opinion is that a lot of times, like our families, our friends who all mean well, they want to make sure that we make a safe and good choice. A lot of times they've not had home birth experience or known anyone who's had a home birth. And so it can be really helpful just to hear from someone who has been there, who has made that choice, who has gone down that path, so that as you're evaluating, well, do I really want to do this for myself? Well, you can hear from someone who has done it. And I know there's a lot of myths and things that permeate about home birth. Just read up, educate yourself. I think that's some of the greatest things you can do in making that birth choice. And if you research home birth and you decide that that's not the right choice for you, that's also okay. Home birth is not the best choice for everyone, and that's totally fine. And it's something that I like to emphasize too, especially in the crunchy mom circle. A lot of times I think when we're crunchy or we're naturally leaning, maybe not fully identify with crunchy, we want that natural birth experience. You can still have it in the hospital. And so I just want to emphasize that after sharing my story, I'm so grateful to have had home births. I would not want to choose otherwise. But as I always tell friends and family, if we would have a medically indicated reason that said, hey, you need medical care, we would have absolutely gone to the hospital. So there's no shame either way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Perfect words to end on. So thank you so much for being here today and sharing your story with us, Hannah.
Well, thanks for having me on to talk.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Rising into Mindful Motherhood podcast. If this episode resonated with you or gave you an aha moment, stop what you're doing right now and write a review. This simple act of kindness helps me get this podcast out to connect with as many women as I possibly can. I also have a special offer. If you send me a screenshot of your review, I will take $250 off one of my premium coaching containers. Let me know what resonated with you the most and why. So connect with me in my free Facebook community or tag me on Instagram. You'll find both listed below. Thanks again from the bottom of my heart for tuning in to this episode, and I'll see you next time.